'tis many's a gay night, from dark till daylight, I spend with people of high renown. But in all their grandeur and heaps to squander, my heart would wander for sweet Omagh town.
Today Linus Nugent talks to Declan Ford and recalls his growing up in Omagh during the war years.
Omagh was, to me, as a child growing up, it was the most friendliest people that I think the Omagh people, and if you go, no matter where you go in Northern Ireland, and this is my own opinion, on both sides, I'm not saying, we all knew each other. There was no animosity or anything between us. We were nearly, if I would say, if I'm allowed to say it, integrated.
Born in the 1930s, Linus Nugent makes no apologies for being first and foremost an Omagh man. The Nugents have been at the heart of family life in this small county town for generations. In this short programme, Linus recalls with affection and a degree of humour his childhood memories.
It's very hard to imagine when you're talking to young people and what Omagh was like. And a lot of people not believe this, but this happened to my grandfather, and I remember I was about 7 or 8 at the time. He had a spring cart and he had sold vegetables around the town, and it was my dad that rubbed the vegetables. But he needed a new pony for drawing the cart, and this gentleman told him in the fair, that this pony was bad, that you shouldn't buy it. Of course, he thought he knew all about ponies. Nobody could tell him about good trotter and all this that would do the job. Now, you may laugh at this, but in Bridge Street, number 1 in Bridge Street, at Gallagher's Opticians now, the pony was brought in through the front door, up the hall, the stairs were on your right, halfway up the hall, it turned through to a wee scullery and out into an open yard, and then at a closed shade at the back, and that's where the pony was stabled. But that was okay. Some of the gentlemen told him that he'd made a bad deal. And Joe, my grandfather, he thought he was God's answer to horses. So that was all right. One morning I got up, went in, get the pony out. She was lying dead with the four legs sticking up in the air. But that was the trouble getting her out. I think it took half the bloody town to get her dead pony out through the kitchen and out through the back.
As Linus says, the young people today would hardly believe it. It was a much different world then. Except for Wordy's carts or the very few cars chauffeuring the upper 10% to Omagh railway station, transport was provided by either the trusted Raleigh bike or by well-worn shoe leather. Almost all the stories we have collected about sweet Omagh town refer fondly at some time or other to the pictures, be it the Saturday morning matinee or the Friday show night out. Linus Nugent is certainly no exception. However, his memories are much more personal.
My grandfather was Joe Nugent. He played in the silent movies. A lot of the older people probably know him. I used to hear my dad talking about it. When a film would come, the music would come with the film, understand? And then as the film started, there was a certain time and they took off. He had an orchestra and he played down in Barnescourt for the Duke and Captain Ellis and the show dances. They were big dances in those days in the courthouse. The agricultural show, Omagh agricultural show.
Well then, what kind of music would he play? Would he play music of the time, or wasn't Killian?
No, it would be all
foxtrots.
Strauss, whatever dances they'd done in those days, in 30s, early 30s, late 20s.
But what did he play himself?
He played the violin.
And he played the violin in the silent movies then?
Yeah, but he was the leader, and he taught the music, and His soul music, instruments, bagpipes, melodeons, trumpets, clarinets.
Well, did he repair musical instruments?
He did, yeah.
And he taught?
Aye.
You were telling me that at the fireplace, he would stand and hammer the mantelpiece when
very cross. And when I was a child, I used to hear them giving off. Students would be down to learn whatever piece of music instrument they were interested in, and I would hear him 1, 2, 3. There was a famous place above the fireplace in the mantelpiece where he always hit this with a wee stick, and it actually wore, it's curved where he wore the thing. There wouldn't be so many that people would remember him now, but living in the town. But in the 20s and 30s and the late 40s, and then he was getting old. He died in 45. But there were some great articles. I'm sorry I haven't got the. There was one gentleman wrote a great thing in the local press about him. Took a full page nearly to write about him. It was just probably a local charity. When they were building the Omagh Sacred Heart Church in Omagh, they used to run, and he was involved in playing for dances and gathering up money for that type of thing, all his life, and he had two good wee businesses in the town. And I remember being a child, and for as known as McManus's Corner now, they had that as a fruit shop, and used to send me up to the old home in Colonial, was the grocery shop at that time. When I say grocery shop, it wasn't pre-packed and all this carry on. It was if you wanted ham, they sliced the proper ham, and the cheeses, it all the cheese, and everything was marble counters, and lovely terrazzo floor and all. It was a very clean, hygienic place at that time, and it was known for its tea. But Home and Colonial just wasn't an Omagh shop. I think they had branches all over, and they were very upmarket, high class,
And whereabouts in Omagh was that?
Just below where the old post office used to be, the town hall. You had the old post office, and then you had the Home and Colonial, and then you had Blacks. That was it. It's known as Swan Mitchell's, a Blacks furniture shop, and you had to go in a long corridor between the Home and Colonial and Swan Mitchell's shoe shop, and then Blacks furniture shop was there. But it was very, very good. Very, very. It was really good,
Well, in the years after the war, were there more shops in what we would call the town centre now than there are now? Now we have a lot of offices.
I think it's very hard to get people to. In those days, the people that owned the shops reared their family in the shops. They lived in the premises. It was the shops were open. You know what I mean? 10 o'clock. The picture houses drew a lot of people. On a Saturday night, especially, the bicycles that came into Omagh during the war was 100, 200 bicycles. And a place that was all stored opposite the county cinema called Peter McAlear's. He was known as Sloper McAlear. I think maybe he'll have to excuse me, he's deceased now, but I hope I'm not taking his character away, just a nickname, I could be wrong, but he had a big open yard, and I think for a threepenny bit there was somebody there, you parked your bike, and if you had seen the pigs, there might have been 200 of them, but even boys that worked in the farms, farm lads and sons and everyone that came in, excuse me, from Barra and all this Knockmoyle and Gilligully and all this right. Big night, Saturday night was a big night. They come in the bicycles, parked them, and they had a choice of 3 cinemas, and the shops were open, street shops, old shop, Nardone's, Baptiste's. It was I was really sad to see, even with the troubles, I was sad to see the picture house going out of the centre of the town, because I felt that it brought, and I think I mentioned to one of the councillors one time, that they should convert the town hall into a cinema to try and keep the life in the cinema, because I was at a tribunal and I said to them, Mr. Bowles and another gentleman and barrister from England, and I thought that in those days, now troubles was on, but I told them in no uncertain manner, I registered so as I could voice my opinion, that it was an industrial estate, because the town was barricaded off at one end and barricaded. There was no social life, there was nothing. The town was actually dead. From what I remembered as a child, it was a bundle of activity, especially on a Saturday night.
Did the Troubles put an end to that, or was that fading out anyhow in the 1960s?
The television came in, as you know, and I think it ruined a lot of killing in the country houses as such. And it, not only that, but if you were the owner of the picture house and you cost a lot of money to put on a film show and to keep the heating on it, and the numbers were starting to go down, well, you just couldn't run. So the demand wasn't there because television had come in, no black and white, and everybody was trying to save up to buy their first television, you know. And when it came in, everybody thought it was a wonder to have it in your own house rather than go to the. But I'm glad to see that the films are coming back and that people are going out, because the younger generation have been born and reared with a television from they were a week old, lying in the cot, they see it in the corner, and they want something different.
The years in the second half of this century have brought with them dramatic upheavals. Omagh now enjoys relative prosperity in spite of the loss of its railways and the more recent downgrading of local services. Linus Nugent is an Omagh man who has witnessed all these changes. His childhood memories of the war years are still very much alive. I asked him to describe Omagh during the war.
It's very hard for me to get across what Omagh was like during the war. It was not when you're trying to explain it, you're taking it in the context of how small it was, you know. And it's very hard to tell people that once you went to different areas in the town, you were in the country, like the Dromore Road Bridge. Once you went onto that, or the one up at the Kevlin Road, you went onto that bridge, you were in the country. Or you went up to the red brick house in the Derry Road, you were in the country. That was Omagh. But I remember in about 1940, 41, it was quiet and the war was on, and being a young fella as a child, them days, you never realised what war was about, other than cowboy films, you know. And I remember one night in particular, the noise was serious with traffic, you know, and couldn't get to sleep. But where I wasn't born in, but I was reared in Churchill. The houses are all gone now, of course, you know. But when we woke up in the morning to get up for school, we're confronted with all these army jeeps, big American lorries, and the size of them. Jeeps, we never saw jeeps before. In fact, we were tempted not to go to school that day, you know. We knew we had to go. But we went to school, and the whole talk that day was just Americans, and we thought who would be coming next to Germans, you know, or after the Americans or something. But anyway, we couldn't wait to get home. And then when we realised then, where I lived in Churchill, that the American troops had taken over St. Columba's Church Hall, was a small red corrugated church hall, you know. And they'd taken over the Foresters Hall, and they'd taken over the courthouse, and there's another small hall in John Street. And I was just surrounded from a population, say, where I thought I knew everybody the night before I went to bed, you know, in the town, and then wake up the next morning and the population was increased by maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people, you know. That's what it was like. Well, once they came, there was the blackout, and a lot of people, you know, it's very hard to tell anyone what the blackout was really like. Now, there weren't a big lot of cars in the town, apart from local doctors and local taxis and a few old vans for deliveries and that. But everybody had to have, even the cars had to have or tin plate or something over their headlamps, and they just shone down on the road, you know, and all the windows had to be closed well at night and keep no light. And there was civil defence, and I remember we were all as children and parents and everything else sent down to the town hall to fit these gas masks on us, you know, these gas masks in a small box and you hung over your arm. But the authorities or the civil defence people that were fitting, you know, once they put it on for the first time, you thought you were going to suffocate, you know. And as you were trying to breathe, the mist covered up in the perspex in the front, you know, and it was really funny, but thank God we never had to use them. And I remember one gentleman, Alec Reid, was very much involved in it, and he was involved in the Red Cross in them times, you know. Well, then one week went into the other, and then we got to know the individual military people themselves because we were passing them every day of the week, standing guard and that, you know. But for school ones like us, and where I lived, it was such a joyous time because we always had plenty of money. They always were doing messages for them, and they couldn't get out. And one great thing that they loved was ice cream. They really loved, the Americans loved ice cream. And the funny thing about it was, the two shops in the town that sold ice cream at that time were both Italians, Baptistis and Nardone. And it was funny, they were interned during the war, although the families were okay, and not that the gentlemen involved were okay too, but just that was the way that things went in those days. But we had three picture houses in the town in those days, with the county cinema, and I would say, looking back on it now, I would say the county cinema, for the size of the town, I would say it had been one of the best designed cinemas in Ireland. It was unbelievable to think that the design that Mr. Donoghue went to. And then you had the Miller's, which is always known as the old Miller's Picture House. It was down, excuse me, at the back of the Royal Arms. That's the Royal Arms Ballroom now. And then with the old Star Picture House, which was round opposite the showgrounds, where for their education college is built now.
Was there any restriction on the troops? Or did they had access into the town? They could go to the pubs, they could go to the shops?
Yeah, there was no restriction, but there was no dances as such that they could participate in it. I knew, or maybe I was too young to know, but I knew they hadn't got the premises to hold dances because everywhere was what is the word, confiscated. And they even had moved into the showgrounds. They even took over the showgrounds, and they built mizzen huts, semicircle huts, corrugated, camouflaged and everything else, and the showgrounds, and had their guards outside as well. Of course, then you had the old home, as we called it. In those days, you were able to go up. That's up at the back of St. Lucia, you know, and that was the old Enniskillen depot. And we used to go up there and play in the home, but then once the Yanks and restrictions became more. But every day of the week, you had bunches of maybe 30 or 40 army boys of different centres of the town going out and out marches around the countryside, dressed up with camouflage and pieces of bushes and hanging on them, all this carry on, you know.
Because as you were saying earlier on, these men had been conscripted, so they were...
I would reckon, yeah, there was one wee guy we got very friendly, he was Butch, and he was very friendly, but he was about 5 foot plus, just, you know, and he hated it. And he was in guard, most of his life he seemed to be in guard outside St. Columba's Church Hall, and he used to curse these army boots, and we would look down at them. We felt sorry for him because his toes the boots seemed to be curved, you know, and this big American waterproof coat and a helmet and his big rifle. We got friendly with us, and we all called him Butch and everything else. But they were very good. They give the children Coke. We never knew what Coke was, and they were the real good Coke bottles. I'm sorry I haven't got them now, you know. If the glass in them were, you could have hardly broke them, you know. And they were all shipped over from America probably to them. But there was some of the girls locally married them and went back to America with them, you know.
And you were saying that they were good to the kids, and that you ran messages.
They were very good to. It was just, we were all like one family. We all lived in that area, and they lived in that area, you know. And there was never no trouble or anything, you know. And young boys, being young boys, my age group anyhow, they didn't know what it was not to have money. Pictures every night if we could get. It wasn't the money that kept us back, it was just our parents. Although they didn't really know that we had this money, you know, or that would have been around.
Will you tell us that story again about the purchasing the bottle of whiskey?
Well, there's several stories. I remember one time we were playing up, and the man, he was chairman of the Omagh District Council, and he lived his house his gable house came out onto the footpad, and it was up in James's Street, and he was named Mr. Rogers, and he never once hunted us or a ball went in the garden. He never. But in those days, the balls were like gold dust because we couldn't get them. We just weren't there. But this day we were playing the handball up, and of course the ball rolled down, missed it or something, and it rolled down going by John Street. And just then these two soldiers come up round the corner, and they were helping each other to get round the corner. And there was a right few drink on them, and of course one of them stopped the ball with his foot, you see. So I run down to get the ball, and I reached down for the ball to get it, thank him for it, save it run away out onto the road. And he got a hold of me in the collar, and he says, "Hey, kid," he says, "could you go and get me a bottle of whiskey for this, you see?" And he put his hand in his pocket, and I could hear the coins rattling, and the young ones wouldn't know what they were talking about now, but my eyes lit up when I saw the big white £5 note coming out, It was something that, God rest my poor father, maybe wouldn't have got it in a week's wages, This £5 note, the old half crowns, the old 2 bob bits, the old tanners. I had to talk in them terms, you see. So I gathered this all up, and I was watching the £5 note more than the other because I didn't want it to blow away down in Publican. John Holland said, "John, could I get a bottle of whiskey for this?" And he looked at me and he says, "Who's that for?" And I says, "It's for 2 soldiers, and they must have just come out of your bar." And he seen me with a white £5 note in my hand. He didn't say no, So he reached the £5 note, give me change, And I had all this change, and I come round in this wee brown bag and this bottle of whiskey, and give it to the 2 Yanks, and they were taking it up to the hall, and they give me this. "You keep the change, kid. You hold." My God Almighty! When I looked, there was half crowns, and there was 2 bob bits, and it was serious. And of course, all my friends, they come running down. What did we do? Just stampede down High Street like Roy Rogers and Gene Audrey hunting, getting away down to this Baptist's fish suppers, ice cream. We were all sick, But it was good. We never thought of the war. It was happy times for us, and we enjoyed it. And then we were able to get the pictures. We had the money for the pictures. And then they wasted a lot because we never knew what a baseball bat was or a baseball. And all of a sudden, these boys were out playing with these big, massive gloves with one hand, and it was like a hurling ball nearly, And they were throwing it from one and up catching it, and the boy would throw it back and practicing. And they probably they could have been professional baseball players in America and conscripted and just wanted to keep their hand in, And that was probably the way they done it, But I remember one night, and it was a winter's night. In fact, it was Holly Eve. I think I said this before, I was telling you. And sister and me, we were just in, that's all Mum had at that time. And of course, we were playing with the basin and the apple in the basin, trying to get it. And the knock came to the door about 8 o'clock at night. My mum had baked 2 apple cakes. Now, in those days, there was plenty of cooking apples. Maybe I stole the apples out of somebody's orchard, I don't know. But anyhow, we had the apple cake, And my dad went out to the door, and this was once the Americans left, and the English forces moved in, you see. And this English fella wanted to know, could he get some baking soda? His friend had heartburn or something, So I remember my dad coming in, my mum, and asking for any baking soda. So she kept in the wee jar, and she said she had. And my dad, being my dad, says, would you mind if I give one of these fellas this apple tart, one of these apple tarts? We have plenty here, And my mum remembered as well saying, at those times, whatever way she baked it, there was a lot of tracing, and the apple tart had stuck to the plate, And she didn't want, plates were scarce, No, it was hard to get plates. But if you took the apple tart off, the apple cake off the plate, it would broke all up, So my mum says, tell him, surely put a bit of newspaper around it, but I would like the plate back, if it was possible. So Dad wrapped it round the newspaper and out the baking soda and said, look, here's an bit of apple cake that you and share with your friends maybe when you go up. So the guy went up, but please bring me back the plate because we're short of plates. About 10 o'clock that night, knock came to the door. This is true. Knock came to the door again. It was the same. My dad went out. We were just getting ready for bed. Half a dozen plates, half a dozen cups, half a dozen knives and forks, all marked Naffy, you know. And we had them for nearly during the whole war. Although we had rationing, and when I say rationing, during the war we had a ration book and you were allowed so many coupons for a shirt and so many for so much sugar and butter and your essential things that you weren't extravagant in them because the war was on. And but having said that, you know, the Omagh people and maybe the people in Northern Ireland in general didn't maybe get it as tough maybe as the people in London or south of England. It's unbelievable, you know. You're talking to young school ones now, they would say they couldn't believe the atmosphere that was. We hadn't financially, there was very few people in, but we were all very happy and we got through it, you know.
Is many's a gay night from dark till daylight I spend with people of high renown. But in all their grandeur and heaps to squander, my heart would wander for sweet Omagh town.